Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Subdial. Today we are here with Michael K, who's the voice of the Yankees, host of the Michael K Show and Center Stage on Yes Network. And if that wasn't enough, he is also the stimulus of the ESPN Extra Show. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm pretty good, guys. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good, definitely.
We have a lot of questions for you, so let's get into those.
Okay.
So what got you hooked into baseball so much that you became the play-by-play commentator for one of the most iconic teams?
Well, you know what? I just that was the first sport that I loved. I would watch it with my dad, and I just fell in love with the Yankees. And at first, I wanted to be a Yankee player, but I knew I wasn't good enough. So I started to say, well, how could I be involved with the Yankees? So when I was about 9 years old, I said the thing that I wanted to do was be the broadcaster for the Yankees. So obviously, it was a long shot, but it ended up turning out just the right way, the way I had hoped. I ended up becoming the Yankee announcer on radio when I was 30 years old. So I consider myself very, very fortunate to be able to do something that I dreamed about doing my whole life.
Definitely, that's such a big accomplishment to be part of such a well-known organization such as the Yankees.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. So with being the voice of the Yankees and having run three other shows, how did you balance out your schedule?
It's hard. Sometimes there's not enough time in the day. You just have to be able to have a plan how you go into it. You have to certainly put aside time to spend with your family, your wife and kids, and you have to prepare for all the shows that you do. So on any given day during the baseball season, I have the 4 hour radio show and then I have a game after that. So it's tough. Baseball season is probably the toughest because you have both of those things that I have to do. And then in the winter, I just do the radio show. And then we sprinkle in center stage every now and then. But it's difficult to allocate your time in just the right way and be prepared in the way that you have to be prepared to do those things.
Yeah, even us, only running one podcast, we sometimes can't even find the time ourselves.
It's tough. It really is.
So, what made you want to commentate for the Nintendo 64 All-Star Baseball game with Sterling, also in addition to the New York Yankees?
So you guys have played that game, huh?
I think my dad actually did check that
Yeah.
game out. I haven't myself, though.
Well, it was a long time ago, and they asked me and my partner on the radio, John Sterling, if we would like to do it. So we did it for that 1 year, and it seems like that's still something that people play. It's really hard to do a video game because you have to get into a studio and you have to pretty much create every single situation that could possibly happen in a baseball game. So there are hundreds of thousands of those situations. So you sit there, you say everybody's name, you say every kind of base hit, you say every kind of type of ground ball, every type of out, and then the computer creates an algorithm, and obviously it plays out that way. So John and I did it. We just did it that 1 year, but it was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of work.
Do you think that work paid off?
It certainly paid. They gave me a paycheck for it, but it seemed like people enjoyed the game for sure. And that was '94, so that was 26 years ago, and people still like referring to that game. So I'm sure it did pay off. It was kind of fun. So it was a lot of. It's also a life lesson. Sometimes things take a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it turns out that the result is really, really good and really fun. And that was the case with that game.
Mm-hmm.
So high fly ball, deep right, Martinez is back, track wall, see ya. I'm sure those words you'll never forget. Out of all the games voicing the Yankees, what do you think has been your favorite moment to commentate for?
Uh, people ask me that a lot, and I've been so lucky because the Yankees are such, as you mentioned earlier, such an iconic franchise. And since I've been broadcasting in '92, they've done a lot of winning. They've won 5 world championships in that time. So there've been a lot of big calls. But, probably my favorite call, guys, it would come down to either Derek Jeter's 3,000th hit, which was a home run. And after I said C, I said history with an exclamation point. Or when Jeter got his final hit at Yankee Stadium, the ground ball through the right side against the Orioles, the year he was going to retire. And then, I said, Derek Jeter, where fantasy becomes reality. Did you have any doubt? So, there have been so many great calls that I've had, the pleasure of calling, but those two stick with me, and people always bring those up to me a lot. So those are kind of fun to be connected with Derek in that way.
So winning an Emmy was, I'm sure, a crazy highlight of your career that happened very soon. So, what did winning the Emmy mean to you?
Well, you know what? I don't really love personal accolades because when you're on the air on a television game or even on a radio, there's so many people behind the scenes, and I just think sometimes it's weird for one person to get a trophy for something that so many people contributed to. But to be honest, when people like don't win the Emmy or don't win the Oscar, and they go, it's just an honor to be nominated. Well, it's better to win, so you do feel a lot better because those are your peers that chose you. They listened to what you did and they said, you know what, this year at this time, you're the best at doing this. So it's a nice feeling, but I don't put too much into it because it's so subjective. And again, there's so many people behind it that it's not just you, but you're the one that gets all the accolades.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm sure there's a lot of players and mainly all sports around the world that are kind of in it for the trophies and the fame.
Yeah,
Um,
that could be the case. I know for the most part, the great players definitely want to win championships, and they also realize that you need a good team behind you to do that. There are very few sports where it's just you. The best tennis player wins, the best golfer wins. But you could have the best player in baseball, that's Mike Trout, and the Angels don't even make the playoffs. So you need people helping you in any walk of life. So that's important.
mhm.
So when you underwent vocal cord surgery back in 2019, I'm sure you were devastated to leave your podcast and the booth for a little time. How did it feel to return and bounce back from the surgery?
It was definitely scary, because when you make your living talking and all of a sudden I wasn't able to talk for 6 weeks, they didn't allow me to talk and they had cut some things out of my vocal cords, and you hope that it heals the right way. And the first couple of games that you come back, there's definitely some nervousness and trepidation whether or not your voice is all the way back. And to be honest, after the 6 weeks off, and all of a sudden you start talking and doing games, it still doesn't feel that strong. So there's still fear, there's still anxiety, and you wonder, am I going to be able to do this? This is what I do for a living. This is how I pay my bills. So after a while, though, after I'd say about a couple of weeks, it felt like it was back to normal, and it was quite a relief. So that was a scary time to sit there and watch other people do your job, and you couldn't even talk. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend that for anybody to have to go through.
Was it like super easy to go back? Like, cause after such a like insane surgery like that on the vocal cord, after you said your life and what you make money from is talking, was it easier for you to come back?
It was, it's not as if I forgot how to broadcast, but again, my voice didn't feel as strong because it's like any kind of muscle. If you don't use it a lot, it's going to get weak, and it's not going to feel as strong. And when you start to use it again, you're going to wonder, am I going to have the same strength that I had before? And I think it built up over time, and repetition gave it strength again. So again, after a couple of weeks, maybe closer to a month, I felt that this is going to be fine. So yeah, definitely nervous when I came back, but after a couple of weeks, I felt that it was going to be all right.
So there are many kind of speculations and rumors about the MLB making a return. So obviously there are two sides to this story. What do you think should happen?
Well, I certainly understand the economic aspects for both. The players want to be paid, the owners don't want to lose as much money. But one thing that I would recommend to both sides in the history of this country, with everything that's going on in the world right now, people need sports as a diversion, and I would hope that they would come to some sort of an agreement, meet somewhere in the middle for the good of the country, not just for themselves. But again, that's easier said than done. This is how these people make a living. These are the business of the owner, and neither side wants to lose money. Neither side wants to feel as if they're getting ripped off. So it's a tough negotiation, but I hope that cooler heads prevail and that at some point there will be baseball because I think the country needs it. I think people need it to take their mind off of what's going on. And I think the sport needs it as well. You can't go, it would be 18 months till next April when the 2021 season starts. And that's a long time for sport to be away. And sometimes when a sport is away for that long, people might not love it the way they did before it went away. So I think baseball and the players have to be careful about that.
Hmm. So what advice do you have to give to a podcast like ours that's trying to grow as much as possible? You know, because we asked this question to many different people because we want to know because there's so many people who like different sports and want to grow and try to just be better at what they do. So, and you're definitely at one of the top people in your game as a commentator. So
Thank
yeah, it's really interesting. Like, what advice do you really have for us?
Well, the best advice I could give to anybody doing anything is that the more you do it, the better you become. It's called repetition. The first time I did a Yankee game back in 1992, I certainly wasn't the same as I am now. The more you do things, the better you will get. That's just the thing in any walk of life. If you're a cab driver, if you're an Uber driver, if you're a carpenter, the more you do it, the better you're going to become. So just keep doing these. You guys ask good questions. You've obviously done your research, and that's important as well. And I know that when I do center stage, I do as much research as possible. I try to know every answer that the guy's going to give me before he gives it to me. But the other key for anything like what you guys are doing, listen to the answers, because the person that's talking might say something where you go off script and go, oh, maybe I should follow up on that. And that's important as well. But again, doubling back, the more of these you do, the better you become. The better you become, the more comfortable you become. And if you're comfortable, and that's the key to being good at anything.
Thank you so much, Mike. I think that'll actually wrap up our interview here. Thank you so much for your time. It means a lot to us. And goodbye.